Hey, Randy Joe here, or the Average Joe, and today we are going to be listening to Danny Brown's Quaranta. And remember, this is just a reaction video, this is not a full-blown review. If you want a review, a more thorough, in-depth review on this album, go to www.theaveragejoesmusicopinion.com, which should be uploaded at the time of this video's upload. So if you want to go and read that review, go there. But again, this is just a first reaction video, so what I say here and how I feel about things most likely will change. That being said, expect a fairly large bias for this reaction, because if you cannot tell or if you're unaware of Danny Brown, I am a huge fan. In fact, I am probably a bigger fan than most people. In fact, I would actually put him probably in my top 5 favorite artists ever. Of all time, of any artist, of any genre ever, Danny Brown would be in the top 5, I would say. He is my favorite rapper of all time. I've got his vinyl in the background, as you can see, XXX, Quaranta being the sequel to that album. And you also have You Know What I'm Saying, his last album, and of course I'm rocking the merch as well from his recent Scaring the Hose tour, which also love that album. So again, huge Danny Brown fan. I have been waiting for a very long time for Quaranta, and it is finally here, so expect a bias for that going in. But without further ado, I want to jump into this thing, because I've been waiting, like I said, for a long time. I just want to hear it. I've heard the singles, love the singles, gotta hear the whole thing now. As far as I can tell, this album is shorter, at only 34 minutes and 21 seconds. It has 11 songs. Some of these songs are quite short. The shortest here being, looks like 2.5 minutes. So let's not waste any more time. Going right into the first track, the title track, Quaranta. Keep the lyrics here. I like that bass line. Right off the bat, that atmosphere. I love when he performs in this like deeper, normal voice regimen. I love his love how he's just kicking this thing off, sort of looking back at, the fame that he's sort of earned and kind of almost the hardships that come along with it.
A lot changed in XXX came out. Bought a few cars in our house here for me. All everyone do is ask, and when you don't have, they just talk behind your back.
Man, he's a lot more in his feelings than typical. Damn. Oh, that guitar too. That sample. The thing I like about Danny is he blends like rock and rap fluidly. It's not like rap rock like a lot of rap rock is. It feels like it's breaking the barrier there. Right off the bat, hard-hitting track. Right into Tantor. This was the first single. It's produced by The Alchemist, legendary producer. And I've heard this many, many times since its release. I avoided the leaks, but I did hear it live when he performed it on the Scaring the Hose tour. And I loved it then, and I still love it now. I do like the second single more, which obviously will show up later. But Tantor is good. This is a banger of a track. Wonder if there's any like major bangers on here, though, considering it was kicked off with fairly slow, more melancholic vibe. That iconic like yelpy vocal. The overall like chaotic tone of this track reminds me a lot of the Ain't It Funny days of Danny Brown, which people love. The way it like washes out there too. The very like weird, like almost like prog rock sample on this thing is so just like out of this world, and something that most rappers wouldn't even like try to rap on. But Danny does it, and he does it with ease. Greatest rapper ever. And the Office sample, I think a lot of people think that's a little overplayed, but it works with the chaos of the track here.
User disconnected from your channel.
Alright. Obviously I love it. Next we're going to Ain't My Concern. This really is more of like a fanboy reaction rather than trying to be as unbiased as possible. Oh, I like those drums. Those drums are sick. That slow build. This is like his third voice that he doesn't do like as much, I find. He did it more on the back end of Triple X, but it's different than his normal, almost like deeper tone that he does. I love this sort of like delivery. It's got a bit of like a flair on it. That's the thing I love about Danny, is he shifts between these like very obviously like punchline-esque lines, like going big like bitches panties on that time of the month. Obviously a very like sarcastic, weird, jokey sort of line to slip in there. But then not long after jumps into lines like, you can never trust yourself when you live in a lie, like a few of these rappers I know, always tracing trends. It's like he's calling out others, but he's also sort of just talking about the very like real, almost depressing state of fame. Just something to think about. I love how Danny just shifts so easily between humor and very serious topics. Much more serious topics than this at times, obviously, but that's just an example.
Back in the day, they sold for rock and roll, but with this rap shit, a nigga sell his booty hole. What you doing?
See, like a line like that, like what is that? Back in the day, they sold their soul for rock and roll, but with this rap shit, a sell his booty hole. You can't make this shit up. And somehow Danny does. I love this like washed out vocal. Again, he does like a lot of things with his vocals too that most artists would not think of, especially on Atrocity Exhibition. I like that shimmery sort of like background. This is a good beat. Right now we're gonna go into Dark Sword Angel. Liked Ain't My Concern. There's a much darker tone and vibe to this album so far, which I know he addressed, but he said this album would be darker, and it's delivering. Ooh. I don't know what that sample is. I swear I've heard it. I like the way that like it sounds like so like disturbed and like twisted. The drum beats on this too. Classic Danny lines. Always diving into his sexual escapades, and they're always hilarious. It's never just like straight in your face. It's always done in some weird, twisted metaphor. Oh, this beat. What a like. Oh. This beat is so like rich and dynamic, and just like incredible production on this one. Like it's just got so much going on, and the drumming, oh, like that, the skittery drums. Beautiful beat, beautiful song. Next we're gonna go on to YBP featuring Bruiser Wolf. If you're unfamiliar with Bruiser Wolf, he is part of Bruiser Brigade, Danny Brown's label and rap group that he often mentions. There's even a song on Triple X called Bruiser Brigade, and it is a great track on there. And Danny has always, shouted out Bruiser Brigade. He always will. It's his label now, and he can do whatever he wants now that he's out of Warp, which is what he produced Atrocity Exhibition onward onto. And this is his last album on Warp. Going forward, he will be doing self-released releases on Bruiser Brigade. But anyway, sorry to get sidetracked. We're on YBP. Not too sure what the abbreviation is there. Am I missing something? Young, Black, and Poor. So he shows what I know as a young, white, lower class individual. His delivery here, that flow. Damn. That fucking delivery. God. There's Bruiser. God. Their delivery, both of them so far, their flow and delivery has just been like so smooth, and like it's like so consistent without like stopping, yet it never feels like they're out of breath, and it's just like rolling off their tongue. And the beat underneath here, it's like, it seems very simple, but man, it's so like carefully put together. Like that. I love that. Like that little melody. Man, Bruiser, great verse from Bruiser here. This is a fire song.
Stuck in the middle between Blade and Dilla, surrounded by killers, couldn't see the big.
Ooh, shout out to Jay Dilla and Blade. But I'm more of a Dilla fan myself. Which, by the way, if you haven't read the book about Jay Dilla, incredible producer, gone too soon. It's called Dilla Time. Go check it out. Incredible book if you are interested in producers and production and just like the overall rap scene in the 90s and early 2000s when Dilla was a prominent figure in the underground. Incredible book, honestly. Great book. Sorry to get sidetracked, but again, if you're going to shout out Dilla, I gotta speak.
World, they don't care about us.
Incredible song. The delivery by both Danny and Bruiser Wolf here has been great. The production, that little melody in the background, that was a great song. I've heard this many times since its release as a second single for this album, and just gonna get it out of the way. I love this one. I'm loving all the songs here. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Greatest rapper ever. Great song about gentrification. White people moving into black neighborhoods and changing them to their aesthetic. Kind of like pushing out the original race there. Also wanted to say, the second single for this album, a lot of people preferred Tantor to this one, but I think this one is a stronger song overall and a stronger single. And the themes that he's discussing here, I think, are very important and delivered in your very typical Weird Danny fashion. Again, themes of gentrification, something that a lot of rappers, I feel like, don't speak on too much. Obviously, certain rappers will, the more politically aware ones, or at least ones that want to tackle that side of things. But they don't tackle it in the same way Danny does, which Danny does it in a way that is soaked in a sense of humor. So, personally, love the way he does it. It's almost satirical in a sense. But this song, catchy as hell, still catchy as hell while being, thematically important. Like, come on. Damn, they made that a dog park. Ho sold pussy right there like a Walmart. Like, come on. Hilarious line. Gets right to the point of the song, but does it with a clear sense of humor. Great chorus. Also, go check the music video for this as well if you like the song. Great music video. Great beat. Fire beat. Fire song. Maybe one of my favorites on the album so far. But again, I've heard this multiple times, so. Next, going on down with it. Let's waste not any time. Produced by a longtime collaborator, Paul White, who's worked with Danny for a long time. Great producer. Back in his feels. Damn. Danny just really diving into a more emotional side that we don't typically see him in.
Too confident, thought you wouldn't go nowhere. Now it's all over. Can't stay sober.
Damn.
My depression, hoping I can get over.
That's gotta be one of the most just sad verses I've ever heard him deliver. His energy on that thing was so down tempo and low. He literally sounds like he's on the brink of tears, given that verse there. The emotion in his voice. I don't know if I've ever heard Danny sound so heartbroken. Sounds so low. Granted, with the story of the song here, it's clear that Danny made the mistake, but still, the delivery and the heartbreak is very real and raw here. Great beat from Paul White too. Very slow and matches the overall depressing tone here. I like the bass line too. Loved that one. I don't know if I've ever heard him sound just so raw. But next we're going on to Celibate featuring Mike. Big fan of Mike recently. I've never heard of him until earlier a couple months ago when I heard him on Earl Sweatshirt's War Dire. And then he dropped an album called Burning Desire, which loved that album. Rated it fairly positive on my website, www.theaveragejoesmusicopinion.com. Gotta plug that. If you want to see that review, go check that out. But anyway, love Mike. Great delivery from this guy. Some would say it's a sleepy delivery, but I think he is overall a great lyricist and performer within his music. So we're going to just jump right into Celibate, because I didn't think we would get a Mike feature with Danny. Anyway, I like how we're getting the more serious, regular voiced Danny on this album. Something that we got on the second half of this a lot. He's very careful with it usually, but in this album he's putting it on full display. I love how he's like performing in almost like a talking fashion too. We got our boy Mike coming in soon. God, I love his Mike's delivery is so like down tempo, slow, almost like sludgy, but I love it. It's that low energy mixed with the very hard hitting bars of his. I honestly think Mike, with all these recent major collabs he's been doing, is going to have a fairly big glow up in the next 2 years. Bold prediction, putting it here though. I love that long play out there. Going right into Shakedown, where you get your lotion from. I think that's a reference to the final Scaring the Hose track, where you get your coke from. Who let your ass record, your engineer is a troll. Classic bar. Danny returning back to speaking on love and this broken relationship. Damn. Again, Danny very like melancholic and depressed on this one. He wasn't joking when he said this would be his like most depressing and darkest album yet. I like that one. It was again more low key. He's doing a lot of these more down tempo tracks on here. Overall, enjoyed that one. We're going on to Hanami.
Probably never win a Grammy or a chart on the charts. Should I still keep going or call it a day? All night thinking about the mistakes I made.
Probably never win a Grammy or a chart on the chart. I think this is an interesting thing about Danny, is that he has to be aware that like someone like him would never get a Grammy. And it's not because he doesn't deserve it. It's because the Grammys are rigged for people against him. They're definitely more of a popularity contest and more for people that are kind of just singing to the choir in a sense. So people like Danny Brown rarely ever get nominated. It's, again, the Grammys are for the ones that the old white men in charge of the Grammys know and understand. And they don't understand Danny. And they never will, especially with his very weird sort of personality matched with his very strange production choices that, are really creating a sense of influence and change in the rap industry. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents. He deserves the Grammys, but there needs to be an award show that's more dedicated to, I guess, actual artistry. Like, keep in mind, sorry, I'm going back on the Grammys thing. Keep in mind, there was no rap or rock categories until the 90s. And rap at that point, was about 15 years or so before the Grammys became, even aware of its existence. And rock music has been around since the 50s. And again, wasn't really getting any nominations in its own categories until the 90s, because that's when they made the rock and rap categories. So the Grammys have always been behind. And I think that's a clear enough reason as to why they should just be, voided out of existence.
Time back, time to pray. Put my life in my purse when I'm dead in the hearse. You done read between the lines, see the pain and the hurt. Or the trauma I endured, drugs and drink was the cure. Had to send to make ends, but
yeah, very depressing tones within these lyrics. I really like the way That beautiful piano coming in. Wonder if that's a sample. Like building up a groove. Such a smooth groove there. The drumming on this album so far has been pretty fantastic. Great sample choices, and I think it's all in the drum samples too. A lot of these choices are just, they just have such a raw, almost like tribal tone to them. I really love the overall aesthetic of the album so far. Last album, we are on to the last track here, Bass Jam. Is it going to be bassy? Guess we'll find out. Also produced by Paul White, the legendary longtime collaborator of Danny Brown, who Danny has much more sparsely throughout his music lately. Very down-tempo. Never, like, this whole album so far has been way more laid back than most of Danny's music. I've never heard such a laid back delivery and overall, like, tone within his music before on many of these tracks. Damn. You can hear the emotion in his vocals, like, so clearly. It's so raw. Like all the shout outs to the music he listened to growing up. Anita Baker. Ooh, I like that, like, ooh, in the background. There's gentle, like, backup vocals. I love how, like, depressing the tone is, yet there's, like, a sense of, like, bittersweetness to the memories here. Like a sense of, like, simplicity to the life back then. Although depressing was something that meant a lot to Danny. Amazing closer, just so, like, chilled back. Very interesting, this album. Very, very interesting. I'll get on that as the song comes to a close. Quaranta. That pretty much does it for this album. It's been a great album, honestly. I loved it, but are you really surprised, considering I said I am quite the Danny stan? Again, the overall tone of this album, much darker, much more depressing, like he said it would be. I really just liked how he's a lot more in his feels and his overall, like, delivery too. Like, you can feel the raw emotion in a lot of the tracks, especially in the second half of this album, which I think is interesting because, this is a sequel to Triple X. That album did a similar thing. The first half of Triple X is very out of this world, weird, tons of just, like, funny one-liners throughout the first half, and then the second half dives right into like alcoholism and the party life and the overall depressing reality of drug addiction. And this album does a very similar thing. The first half, has some high-key bangers on here like Tantor or YBP or Jen's Terrific Vacation. A lot of more upbeat tracks. And then you get into the second half, going right into the more darker, depressing reality of Danny's life. Quaranta, as an opener, kind of does a similar thing, but I feel like it sets up the overall arc of the album. Whereas this talked a lot more about drugs, Quaranta talks a lot more about not just the drug life, but just the sadness that comes with fame and the sadness that comes with his alcohol abuse, which he's spoken on quite a bit on his podcast. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this album. I loved it. It's definitely going to grow on me even more. I can't wait to see what he does next, because now that he's out of Warp, he said he is back to writing music in the way that he used to do it and full of passion. So I can't wait to see what we get now that he has gone fully independent. But yeah, if you want to see what I think about this album after multiple listens, go to www.theaveragejoesmusicopinion.com, where I will have the full review up right now. At the time of this upload, it will be there. So yeah, that pretty much does it. But as always, if you liked this video, please go ahead and like and subscribe if you want to see me react to more albums going forward. Want to try to bang out multiple albums every week if possible. As always, my name is Randy Joe, or The Average Joe, and I'm signing off.